am Anya, and the ultimate moment of my life's professional vindication began with the casual cruelty and stunning short-sightedness of my manager, Mark. I was sitting in his sterile, windowless office, a space that reflected his lack of vision, listening to the predictable, grating sound of his disappointment. "Anya," he drawled, pushing a stack of my meticulously annotated timelines and status reports back across the desk. "Your work on Project Catalyst is simply too slow. You miss deadlines, you over-engineer, and frankly, you're not an agile asset to Apex Solutions in the current climate." He stated the finality of my termination with a cold, rehearsed smile, effective 2 weeks from today. My blood went cold with shock, but simultaneously, my focus sharpened into a lethal point. Project Catalyst, a complex, systemic audit tool, was the culmination of 9 months of my life, a deep, crucial project Mark had consistently dismissed as over-engineered fluff. He thought he was efficiently cutting dead weight and boosting his metrics. He was actually destroying his only line of defense against financial catastrophe. I stood up slowly, adjusting my jacket, and gave him a faint, dangerous smile that instantly wiped the smugness from his face. "You're absolutely right, Mark. I'm slow. But you should know," I continued, leaning slightly over his mahogany desk. "I finished Project Catalyst late last night, and I'm going to spend my final 2 weeks making sure it runs perfectly, just as intended." The shock on his face was immediate and priceless, a look of utter, dawning confusion. He had no idea the sophisticated software he deemed worthless was about to expose a catastrophic systemic flaw costing the company $800,000 annually, a flaw that would lead directly and solely to his humiliating termination. The core of Mark's betrayal wasn't merely the administrative act of firing me. It was the systematic, years-long psychological erosion of my professional value and integrity. He had built his entire flimsy career on superficial, fast-tracked projects and aggressively taking credit, constantly criticizing my methodical, quality-first approach and my refusal to cut corners, always claiming I was too detailed for the modern, fast-paced corporate environment. He repeatedly took credit for the successful initial planning phases of my projects, ensuring his visibility, only to publicly blame me when the rigorous final deadline arrived, ensuring he looked decisive and proactive while I looked incompetent and sluggish. This final dismissal, delivered with a rehearsed clinical speech about performance metrics, was the ultimate calculated insult, solidifying his belief that he was an infallible corporate genius and I was a disposable, interchangeable drone. The emotional stakes were immense. If Project Catalyst failed to launch successfully or if its findings were dismissed, I wouldn't just be unemployed. I would permanently validate every condescending critique he had ever leveled against my professional integrity and worth. The thought of Mark celebrating his newly achieved efficiency and promotion while I struggled to find work was an unacceptable, motivating pain. I vowed that for my last 2 weeks, I wouldn't just work for the company. I would work solely for the brutal, public, and undeniable truth that would set me free. The true, immense, and desperately needed value of Project Catalyst was completely lost on Mark, who only possessed the capacity to see the immediate deadline and the quarterly revenue report. I had designed Catalyst not as a simple, static reporting tool, but as a deep-dive, autonomous diagnostic system, a system capable of finding the invisible, systemic financial leaks hidden deep within Apex Solutions' vast operational structure. The key target was a catastrophic, high-cost operational inefficiency, hidden within the legacy supply chain management software that was silently bleeding the company dry through unnecessary fines and penalties. My preliminary models had estimated the annual recurring loss to be a minimum of $800,000, a figure that, if substantiated, would shock the board to its core and demand immediate executive action. Mark, who only understood bright, color-coded charts and fast, easy deliverables, had aggressively dismissed my warnings about deep structural flaws as my typical over-engineering and academic fearmongering. He was utterly oblivious that the very tool he labeled a failure and cancelled was the only thing capable of saving Apex Solutions from this financial hemorrhage. My immediate goal was to ensure the finished system not only ran but ran silently, autonomously, and perfectly, starting its critical remedial work before Mark could possibly figure out how to shut it down or, even worse, how to fraudulently take credit for its existence. My 2-week corporate notice period began as a precise, tactical chess match fought entirely beneath Mark's notice. Mark, blissfully convinced he had effectively neutralized the Anya problem, assigned me pointless, time-consuming busy work designed to occupy my time and keep me physically distracted, such as revising outdated training manuals and cleaning out old storage closets full of obsolete server parts. He was openly enjoying the last fleeting moments of his supposed triumph and control. I accepted the manual with a calm, accepting smile, but my internal focus was entirely on Project Catalyst's covert activation sequence. Project Catalyst was installed on my local machine, but the crucial final activation key, the module that granted the necessary read/write access to the core server database to fix the flaw, was stored digitally behind Mark's administrative two-factor authentication on a remote, secured server, a critical security measure designed to prevent unauthorized employee access. I urgently needed to bypass that security layer both ethically and discreetly, without triggering any immediate, automated security alarms or logging any suspicious activity. This required intense patience, deep, specialized knowledge of Apex's outdated network protocols, and an absolute commitment to leaving no digital trace of my true activity. The revenge required technical mastery, not brute force or reckless behavior. The first major obstacle was securing the final, digital activation key itself. Mark's administrative account was strictly protected by a proprietary two-factor authentication system, making any brute force password attempt impossible and instantly traceable to my user ID. I desperately needed an internal lifeline, a trusted collaborator within the network architecture. I realized the only feasible way to bypass Mark's digital wall was through the network's physical vulnerabilities, specifically exploiting the daily system access log and maintenance schedule. I needed to know exactly when Mark accessed the core server for routine maintenance, a schedule only the deepest level of IT network engineering knew. The new hook. I secretly enlisted the help of an old, deeply trusted IT colleague, Leo, a network engineer who hated Mark's overbearing arrogance and technical ignorance as much as I did. Leo, bound by strict company loyalty but driven by his profound sense of professional ethics, immediately refused to provide the security key itself. Instead, he provided something equally valuable, a detailed real-time log of Mark's server room access times and biometric scans. This information was a digital goldmine, allowing me to predict the precise narrow window when the core server would be briefly unlocked for its weekly patch cycle, giving me my single crucial chance. The information meticulously provided by Leo confirmed the only possible activation window. The core server was briefly unlocked every Friday night at exactly 2 a.m. for an automated remote patch update. However, even during this narrow secured window, the final validation module for Project Catalyst required a manual install and an in-person physical override directly in the server room, a room Mark meticulously controlled, locking the door and disabling remote access every day. The stakes intensified again. I needed to not only be present in the building late at night but gain discreet, justifiable access to the heavily guarded server room without alerting Mark, who monitored the logs or general security. I needed to stage a credible, controlled disruption that would require my unique, specialized technical skills to resolve. The plan was audacious and precise. I decided to inject a minor, completely harmless, but highly visible bug into a low-priority common operational system, a bug that would cause it to catastrophically crash exactly 1 hour after the office emptied out for the night. This action would force an undeniable overnight emergency maintenance window and grant me the necessary justification to be in the building and crucially near the target server room. The execution of the controlled office disruption was nerve-wracking and incredibly delicate. On Thursday afternoon, hours before my final window, I calmly injected a small, self-deleting script into the company's internal email logging system, a script timed to cause the system to crash exactly 1 hour after the office emptied out for the night. This system crash was harmless to core operations but was visually alarming and guaranteed to trigger the strict security and IT emergency response teams. My plan was to wait until 9 p.m., volunteer immediately to help diagnose the mysterious system failure remotely, and then claimed the issue required a level 3 physical reboot in the server room, citing my unique system knowledge and proprietary patch history. Mark, who was conveniently on a flight to an executive conference, would be blissfully unaware, trusting the IT night shift to handle the problem. My heart pounded violently during the evening commute, wondering if the highly competent IT team would solve the fake problem too quickly, nullifying my entry justification. At 9:15 p.m., my phone buzzed with the anticipated emergency call from Leo. The email system was down, and no one knew why. The precise moment had arrived. The stage was set for my silent, justified infiltration. The server room heist was a silent, tense, and utterly high-stakes operation carried out under the manufactured guise of an emergency fix. I arrived back at the empty, echoing headquarters just before midnight, finding Leo waiting nervously by the main door. He provided me with temporary biometric access to the heavily secured server room, justifying it in the logs as necessary for my specialized script patch installation. The server room itself was an arctic, humming labyrinth of blinking lights and roaring fans, the air thick with the smell of ozone. I located the core supply chain server rack, the true immense target. I didn't waste a second fixing the initial email bug. My actual critical mission took immediate precedence. I quietly plugged my laptop into the server's local port and initiated the critical final validation module for Project Catalyst. The module was massive, taking a terrifying 5 minutes to install and integrate its algorithms with the core system. Every second felt like an hour of exposed vulnerability. Once complete, Project Catalyst went live, running silently and autonomously, its sole powerful mission, to scan, diagnose, and fix the $$800,000 flaw. I quickly removed the initial email bug script, ensuring the system restored itself flawlessly, leaving behind only the humming perfection of Project Catalyst and no trace of my true purpose. Project Catalyst went live at precisely 1:45 a.m. on Friday morning, and the results were immediate, devastating, and undeniable. Running its proprietary deep learning algorithms, it instantly identified the massive systemic supply chain flaw, a critical bug in a legacy customs declaration module that was causing massive repetitive fines and fees, totaling the estimated $$800,000 loss. My software didn't just report the error. It automatically initiated a fix protocol, rerouting key data streams to prevent future losses. Anya had succeeded, completing the primary mission. Mark, meanwhile, was oblivious, sending cheerful, self-congratulatory emails from his conference about strategic networking. I anonymously leaked a preliminary diagnostic report, a sanitized, official-looking summary of the massive $$800,000 exposure traced directly to prolonged management negligence, to a single trustworthy board member, Ms. Davies, who I knew valued integrity and financial prudence over politics. The leak was untraceable, delivered via an encrypted channel from a burner account. I spent my remaining time at Apex Solutions observing the digital ripples, knowing the audit hammer was about to drop, utterly silent on the immense value I had just delivered. Mark's final days were an oblivious performance of smug corporate bliss, completely ignorant of the powerful internal time bomb I had successfully armed. He spent Monday morning scheduling his elaborate farewell party, convinced he was leaving on a high note and that Apex Solutions would immediately collapse without his visionary leadership. He even had the audacity to call me into his office to condescendingly ask if the outdated training manuals were finished, confirming he had zero interest in Project Catalyst's status or true worth. I smiled sweetly and confirmed the manuals were almost complete, maintaining my cover. His oblivious confidence was the perfect, thick camouflage for my continued covert work. The tension was immense, knowing that at any moment, the financial audit I triggered would pull him violently from his pedestal. I continued my useless manual revisions, using the quiet time to meticulously monitor Project Catalyst's logs. The system confirmed its autonomous fix was holding firm, actively preventing further losses. The estimated savings for the first 72 hours alone were already well over $6,500. The proof of concept was irrefutable and mounting by the hour. The external audit, triggered by the diagnostic summary I leaked to Ms. Davies, hit Mark on Tuesday afternoon with the force and unexpected timing of a sudden earthquake. He was pulled into an emergency, confidential meeting, assuming it was about his expected promotion or his successful management of my departure. Instead, he was confronted by two grim-faced external auditors and Ms. Davies herself, who held my anonymous diagnostic report like a lethal weapon. The auditors' questions focused solely on Project Catalyst and the exact $$800,000 figure, which Mark immediately dismissed with arrogant certainty, not comprehending the gravity of the number. That Project Catalyst thing was slow and over-engineered reporting fluff, he lied, casually claiming he shifted my focus weeks ago and that the project was essentially shelved. He openly lied about his non-involvement, ensuring his guilt was layered deep. The terrifying contrast between his flippant lies and the deadly serious tone of the auditors was palpable. My anonymous diagnostic had done its job perfectly. It forced the board to take immediate, serious action, and Mark was walking straight into the guillotine I had carefully prepared. The auditors, utilizing the core data provided by Project Catalyst's live output, immediately confirmed the massive, ongoing $800,000 annual loss and its exact source. They meticulously traced the source of the fix protocol, the automated rerouting of data, back to a single authenticated network install performed at 1:45 a.m. Friday morning under my login credentials. The digital trail was undeniable and pointed directly to me. Mark was confronted with this precise technical fact, which he immediately dismissed as a minor configuration adjustment made before my departure. He scrambled, trying desperately to claim he had personally directed me to fix the flaw during my final cleanup duty. The auditors, however, were meticulous and presented the chronological logs. They knew the flaw was systemic, requiring the sophisticated AI diagnosis only my software provided. The stakes were now Mark's entire professional existence and reputation. The auditors were no longer investigating a simple flaw. They were investigating Mark's gross negligence, his active attempt to conceal his failure, and his deliberate effort to sabotage the project creator. Mark, now visibly frantic, was granted a brief, closely monitored recess to verify his records. He raced back to Project Catalyst's repository to try and delete my completion logs and inject a file claiming credit for the fix. The irony was devastating and absolute. He finally cared about the software only when it was being used, forensically, to expose him. He found the project folder, but instead of chaos, he found a detailed, pristine, unchangeable completion log, all permanently stamped with my user ID and the 1:45 a.m. Friday timestamp. My system was designed, meticulously, to be tamper-proof against Mark's level of internal management. In a further crushing blow, the log included a time-stamped email I had secretly sent to the system's dedicated, non-monitored log account. Project Catalyst final validation complete. Annual savings confirmed. $800,000. He tried desperately to delete the immutable email log, but the system politely informed him that the record was permanent. Mark's desperate, clumsy attempt to cover his tracks only provided the auditors with more irrefutable evidence of his duplicity and active concealment. The final day arrived. I walked into the glass tower of Apex Solutions, impeccably dressed and radiating a quiet confidence, for my final hour, carrying nothing but my small box of personal effects. Mark, who was supposed to be celebrating, intercepted me in the hallway, his face pale and slick with panicked sweat, his eyes darting nervously. He pulled me violently into an empty conference room, closing the door behind us with a trembling hand. He tried desperately to bribe me to retract my completion logs and claim the fix was accidental. "Anya, listen to me," he whispered, his voice cracking with desperation. "If you just send a quick email claiming the final upload was accidental and that Project Catalyst is still incomplete, I can make sure you get a massive severance package. $50,000 cash. Please, I'm begging you, save my career." I maintained a calm, impassive mask, but my fingers were busy in my pocket, silently activating the audio recorder on my phone. His frantic offer was the final, perfect piece of evidence I needed, proving his attempted bribery and full awareness of the financial situation. I refused him calmly and walked away, leaving him trembling and defeated in the empty room. The final showdown took place in the closed-door boardroom, minutes before my official exit time. I was summoned first, giving a concise statement, followed by a terrified, stumbling Mark. Ms. Davies opened the proceedings with a clinical, detached tone. Mark, trying one last time to save himself, tried to minimize the project's true value, claiming it only solved a minor reporting issue, and then dramatically blamed me for the deadline delay, calling me unreliable and slow. Ms. Davies let him finish his prepared monologue of self-pity and lies, allowing him to exhaust every single excuse. The atmosphere was thick with corporate dread. The emotional core of my long struggle was focused entirely on this single moment of irreversible truth. I knew my silence was my ultimate strength. I simply let Mark hang himself with his own arrogance and greed, waiting for the definitive, unassailable data to speak for me. Ms. Davies did not waste time on further cross-examination or debate. She presented the auditor's final, damning report. Project Catalyst was not only fully functional and live, but had already saved the company $100,000 in just 1 week by actively preventing the hidden fees Mark had ignored. The report meticulously detailed Mark's consistent dismissal of the project, his failure to allocate resources, and the attempted bribe I had just rejected, which Thomas, my lawyer, had already informed the board of. Ms. Davies concluded, "The proven success of Project Catalyst proves gross negligence, financial incompetence, and active concealment on the part of the department head. The recorded attempts to conceal the facts confirm malicious intent. Mark's entire world, built on lies and stolen credit, collapsed." The board members, faced with irrefutable financial data, unanimously voted on his immediate removal. The humiliation was absolute, total, and instantaneous. Mark was formally fired for gross negligence, attempted fraud, bribing an exiting employee, and incompetence, effective immediately. He tried to argue to plead with Ms. Davies, but security was already waiting by the door. His face was a horrifying mixture of disbelief, venom, and total defeat. The mask of the competent leader finally shattered. I watched him being escorted out of the meeting room by 2 grim security guards, clutching a small, pathetic box of personal items. As he passed me, his hollow eyes met mine. They were venomous, broken, and completely devoid of hope. I maintained my calm, professional expression, feeling a profound, quiet sense of immutable justice. The office, already buzzing with whispers, witnessed his public final walk of shame, the disgraced former manager being silently ejected from the building, a direct and devastating consequence of the very project he had belittled. The final, symbolic walkout was pure, unadulterated triumph and profound personal validation. I collected my remaining personal items, passing Mark's suddenly empty, sterile office. My initial sense of defeat had been replaced by a powerful understanding of my true, quantifiable value to the company. I was met at the front lobby by Thomas and Ms. Davies. The conversation wasn't about severance. It was entirely about the future. Ms. Davies, immensely impressed by my integrity, my technical prowess, and my foresight in deploying the system covertly, offered me a massive promotion, including Mark's responsibilities and a substantial bonus equal to 50% of the initial projected annual savings, a direct validation of my work's financial worth. The offer was overwhelming, but I knew I had one more crucial condition to set before accepting. I gratefully accepted the offer but insisted on a crucial amendment. I declined Mark's old manager title. I explained that my value was not tied to his failure, and I absolutely refused to inherit his legacy of toxicity and flawed reporting. Instead, I demanded a newly created role, Director of Advanced Analytics, with complete autonomy over my projects, and a budget dedicated to hiring quality-focused engineers who shared my methodical approach. Ms. Davies readily agreed, recognizing that my insistence on structure and quality was the key to preventing future $$800,000 losses. The true victory wasn't just the money or the title. It was gaining the power to fundamentally restructure the department based on ethics and excellence, permanently ensuring the culture of toxicity that Mark fostered would never return. The first celebration was quiet, intimate, and profoundly meaningful. I sat with Leo, the IT colleague who risked his job to help me, sipping champagne and reviewing the success logs of Project Catalyst. I realized Mark's persistent mocking criticism that I was too slow was actually the greatest compliment of my career. My slowness was not incompetence, but meticulous, thorough quality control. It was my refusal to rush and cut corners that ensured Project Catalyst was immutable, perfect, and foolproof, the very reasons it succeeded where Mark's management failed. My supposed professional weakness became the core, indispensable strength of my successful, data-driven revenge. Mark sent one final pathetic rambling email from his home, attempting to threaten me with legal action, blaming me for his career sabotage, and demanding I undo the fix to prove my innocence. I simply forwarded the entire spiteful message, including the recorded bribe conversation, directly to the legal team's general counsel, who handled the threat swiftly and permanently. The last remnants of his toxicity were gone, digitally purged from my professional life. I deleted his contact information, ensuring his negativity was gone forever. I began my new role, Director of Advanced Analytics, with immediate effect and immense focus. My first official action was to rename the department from Management Solutions to the Catalyst Division, permanently cementing the project's true, lasting legacy. I immediately restructured the entire department, implementing quality-focused metrics and ethical standards, ensuring every engineer felt valued, respected, and empowered. Project Catalyst became the industry standard for supply chain auditing, securing Apex Solutions' financial future and cementing my long, successful reign. My revenge had resulted not in mere destruction, but in the creation of a powerful, ethical empire, proving that integrity, though sometimes slow, always delivers the most satisfying, substantial results. The lasting peace was tangible. I looked out from my spacious new office, Mark's old one, now redesigned with light and glass, and felt profound peace. I had traded the fear of being slow for the certainty of being right. The story of Project Catalyst became Apex's internal legend, the cautionary tale of the manager who fired the employee who saved the company. The only lingering trace of Mark was the annual budget line for the $$800,000 in recovered losses, a permanent reminder of my quantifiable value. I was the architect of my own destiny, and it was glorious.